My guest today is a vocal student of mine who has made his mark in business, on the racetrack, yes, the racetrack, and on stage. Jonathan Ho is a trailblazer. He's a successful businessman who is also a celebrated endurance racing champion who made history as one of the first drivers to officially represent Hong Kong in international endurance racing.
Well, one race I did this year was at this very iconic venue in France called the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So there I think we're well over 300 kilometers per hour.
300 kilometers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is actually going through your mind when you're going 300 kilometers?
You're hyper alert and hyper aware because you're not the only person on the road or on that piece of track going at that speed. I mean, you could literally end up in the forest. And that could be quite dire in terms of consequences. But when you're able to strip away some of that emotion, it could be fear, it could be excitement, and you just do and perform what you're supposed to do.
It's almost muscle memory then at that point in time. So
I don't chase after that feeling, but I chase after that consistency. I've been able to enjoy the process more, get better results.
Is there a point at which the race will cancel because of this? Jonathan, since we last spoke, you've racked up even more podium finishes at some of the world's toughest endurance car races. What really stands out to me, though, isn't just the results, but your commitment and the discipline and the resilience you bring. And these are qualities I've personally seen in you when you and I work together on your singing. And so I'm really excited today to talk to you, to be speaking to you on specifically what it takes to consistently perform at such a high level, especially when it comes to things like mindset and self-talk. So my first question, when you're on the racetrack, going at crazy speeds, how fast do you go? What's the fastest?
Well, one race I did this year was at this very iconic venue in France called the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So Le Mans in Le Mans town is a combination of a part roadways and also a part circuit. And that's known for very high speeds because it's a very long straightaway. So there I think we're well over 300 kilometers per hour.
300 kilometers per hour. Okay, so what is actually going through your mind when you're going 300? I don't think most of us will ever have that experience, but what is going on in your mind when you're going that fast? Is it specific techniques? Is it strategy? Or is it just instinctive?
It's probably a combination of all those three things. A lot of it does come down to feeling and instinct. But you're also mindful, you're hyper alert and hyper aware because you're not the only person on the road or on that piece of track going at that speed. There's other cars around you. And of course, you're in the middle of a competition. So in some ways, you're also very mindful of what the consequences might be with a slight lapse of concentration. I mean, you could literally end up in the forest. And that could be quite dire in terms of consequences. But when you're competing at that level, you already, ingrained in you is the technique. You have that already, basically. And you call upon that and that skill that basically everyone sort of competing at that level has. But of course, it's never a constant because things happen. Weather changes, condition of the car might change. So there's certain things you're managing as well. For example, certain aspects of it could be managing how much fuel consumption you're using. You might be concerned about the tire wear. So, of course, at that moment, your foot might be pinned to the accelerator, pinned to the floor because you need to do that. And that's what you call partly instinct, but also it's a lot of things going through your mind really at that moment.
So when you are going that quickly, I hear you saying that there's so many different things that could go wrong essentially. So when you're at that speed, are you actually thinking or looking for the things that could go wrong, or are you looking for the things that go right? I mean, is this something that it's in your mind to look for, or are you hyper focused? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think, okay, you don't inherently think when you're going at that speed that, wait, something is going to go wrong. I mean, if you did that, then you'll be completely distracted, I think. So you do accept in some ways that there's that inherent aspect that something could go wrong. But of course, you're a lot more focused on the task. You're focused on basically doing what you know is right and correct.
So it's almost mechanical in a way.
It is in some ways. And the way I like to describe it is like the ultimate state of mind is when you become a little bit like a robot. When you're able to strip away some of that emotion, it could be fear, it could be excitement, and you just do and perform what you're supposed to do. So that's why I describe it. It's a little bit like mechanical, a bit like a robot. Then you know you're operating at a very high level, because then it's a little bit beyond maybe just a conscious thought process of what you can do. You just do it.
It's almost muscle memory then at that point in time. So you get into that, I'm a very hyper focused, but you're also very aware at the same time. But it's quite mechanical, but you trained yourself to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily chase after that particular state, but then you do kind of arrive at that state of mind if you're able to repeatedly, let's see, because I'm talking about my discipline is endurance racing. So races could be 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, in that case, 24 hours. So of course, I have teammates and I'm not the only one driving in that whole duration of the race. But let's say each stint that you drive, it could be 1 hour, 2 hours, or even 3 hours. And what you're looking for is that consistency, that you enter a state where it's almost like autopilot. But in our racing, of course, you're still completely controlling what's going on in the car and all that. But you do somehow enter that state if you are able to repeat with that consistency.
Do you drop in? Do you feel like it's a switch you get on, you switch on, or do you have steps that you run through in your mind to get into that state? Is it something that you just access the minute you're in the car?
I think it's more like a result of being able to execute at a very consistent and at a very high level. I don't know how to really describe that feeling, but it's not something that you can just chase after. It's more like when you start delivering and you kind of feel it. Okay, I am delivering at this sort of very, very consistent level, and I know I'm doing something really, really good. You do end up sort of having that feeling, and that feeling is really unique. And it's very special. I think in a lot of people ask me about this phrase in the Formula One film, for those of you who've seen the film. And he does describe something like that, how it's almost like, floating, or I forgot what Brad Pitt suggests.
I think he said flying.
Flying,
right?
flying.
Is that what it feels like to you?
So not exactly like that. I think in the film he says he chases after that feeling. But what I describe to people is exactly what I just told you. I don't chase after that feeling, but I chase after that consistency. And if and when I achieve that consistency, there is a feeling which is a little bit similar to what he described.
I really like that, because I think it makes me think of, we're not chasing towards our goals or chasing towards a specific outcome, but we're creating the conditions for it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think one thing I've learned over the years about racing and this whole notion of chasing after results is if you chase too hard and be too fixated with results, I think we talked about this last time too, you end up achieving less, or it seems to become more and more difficult. But if you then focus more on driving well, your technique and just focusing on the job and not thinking about the result, then it seems that the result is a byproduct of being able to perform. When you're able to perform at that level, the results will come. So it's a slight difference in mindset and approach. But I found myself that in recent years now, as I am closer to the end of my racing career, potentially, that I've been able to enjoy the process more, get better results, be less stressed about the outcomes, and it seems to have worked better.
So has this mindset served you outside of racing?
Yes, I would say just in general, again, is this whole notion about having less expectation of a particular outcome. I think that applies equally well in you go to a restaurant, which you're really excited to try, and the food comes and it's not exactly what you imagined. And sometimes you could be quite annoyed by it, upset about it. But I find myself being less and less annoyed and upset about these things. So what it means is, in general, you feel life is a little bit more calm. You're a little bit more at peace with certain things, with most things. And for me, it's a nice place to be.
You mentioned last time about our interview that we did a few years ago. It's been a few years now.
Yeah.
And I remember in that interview, you talked about the doubts you experienced when you first started down this path towards racing. I mean, of course, it's been a few years since that conversation. I heard you say you're possibly reaching the tail end now of your career in this. So as you, and you've achieved so much more since the last time we've had that conversation as well. And I'm curious, at this point, do you still find yourself facing any kind of self-doubt? Because I also heard you say you're learning to actually enjoy it a lot more. So do these feelings of self-doubt ever come back in at all?
On the racing side, it's become less and less. And I've noticed that myself. And generally, I feel when I approach a race weekend, this year I did 4 or 5 races. And in general, I would say I've been a lot more calm in the way I've approached a whole race weekend, and generally more relaxed. And I've noticed that I've been performing better. So I'm definitely at a level now where I don't know if it's the peak or not, but definitely in terms of from where I started to where I am today, not knowing if I continued where I might be in the future, that I'm performing at a very peak level. And for sure, I do think the key is being relaxed and not letting that self-doubt creep in your mind. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that now I'm overconfident or I feel my abilities are necessarily better, but I'm just more at peace with what I believe I can do. And I feel like I don't really need to prove anything so much anymore. Maybe because I've had a very good run and had those successes, but just at the moment, I'm in a pretty good place.
So when you talk about that sense of calm and that sense of peace, at being at peace, and that being able to actually allow you, it sounds like, to be more in the present moment, to actually enjoy what you're doing more. If you had this feeling, maybe say years ago when you started, do you think you would have been in a different place? Or do you think it's because of the experience that you've now been able to step into that place of peace?
I think it's because of the experiences. It's quite unusual to start off and arrive at that sort of state of mind, because I think in most cases, I mean, a sport in general, a sport like this, it's highly competitive environment. And I'm not a full-time professional, but you can imagine for a professional in particular, you have to constantly prove yourself with results, because that's just the nature of the beast. It's not something that you can say, I know I can do it, but yet I'm not delivering on paper. Then the reality is you're not going to be hired by a top team. You cannot make a career out of it. So there are a lot of realistic implications if you're not delivering. So, and inherently that will come with pressure. And so it would be, I don't really know anyone who starts off and maintains and stays in that sort of phase, but and including myself, because when I first started out, of course, I wanted to prove to myself and prove to others that I could deliver results too. And I think it was a case of, I've been racing since 2004, on and off, not every year, not constantly, but it has taken quite a while to arrive at the state.
Over 10 years.
Yeah, well, 20 years. Yeah.
Oh my, that's right. You said 2004.
2004.
For some reason, my head went to 2014. Yeah. Okay. My goodness. Wow. So you mentioned just now about professionals who work full time. And so preparing for this interview, learned that there is a term. Is it gentleman racer?
Yeah,
gentleman
that's
driver?
one of the terms that has been used quite frequently. Essentially, that refers to, I like to use it, change it slightly. Now, I would just say a non-professional racer versus a professional. The key difference being that one group, the professionals, are being paid. It's their full-time job. let's say in my discipline, they might be racing 30 to 40 races a year. And then for the non-professional, they're not paid. They may need to find sponsors or find means of their own to compete. And they probably will be doing between 5 to 10 races a year. So it used to be that they call this group the gentleman drivers group. But the reality now is even this group has reached a level which is so competitive and so high that I think it's a bit incorrect just to call them gentlemen, because they have to equally invest as much of their available time to be in right shape, be in the right mindset, train, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a different set of constraints.
I think that was interesting to me when I was reading about that, because even non-professional drivers actually have to maintain the same level of skill as professional drivers, because you're competing in the same event, on the same track, and sometimes in the same team.
Correct. And the reality is, and one thing I really love about the racing is that the moment you put your helmet on, no one really is thinking about, oh, he had to put his son to sleep the other night or change a nappy, or he was at a business meeting yesterday and therefore he wasn't able to focus. Like, no one really thinks about these things anymore. It's a great equalizer, and you're expected to perform the moment you put your helmet on. It's like if you're singing, you go on stage, right? I mean, if you have a big audience in front of you, I don't think they'll be too kind to think, oh, he's not prepared or whatever. You're expected that when you're performing that you have to deliver. So it's a great equalizer.
Is there any difference in mindset or constraints? You did mention a few different circumstances between professional drivers and non-professional drivers. Is there anything that is different in terms of the mindset?
Well, I always like to say one thing is probably the risk appetite.
Okay.
A non-professional, because of the reasons I suggested, they probably either have some sponsorship or self-funded. Their appetite of taking risks is probably much lower, because if there's an accident, if there's a crash, it can get very expensive, and it tend to be probably a little bit more careful.
You're speaking about non-professionals.
But a professional, if they're properly paid and their remit is just to go as fast as they possibly can, they tend to have a bit more of a risk appetite. They're going to go for it. Yeah. Yes. But not only because of that, also because they have to perform to justify their position. So therefore, it's that is quite obvious and clear in our world.
I see
the difference.
Is that a good thing, a bad thing, do you think?
It is just what it is. So, and that's something that we just kind of openly accept, and it's the reality of the situation.
In some ways, I'm just thinking about you I'm imagining you in a racetrack and racing, and then there's different cars beside you. Are you also assessing this person's risk based on what you know?
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about that. What is that like?
Well, okay. So in endurance racing, you're not going to win the race in the first lap or the first few laps. You're talking about a race which could be a few hours long. So part of endurance racing, the importance and the skill behind it is to keep your car in one piece, not have contact or minimize any contact you have with other people. So this is also a big difference with sprint racing, which might be 1 hour long or even less, where it's like, you can imagine it's like a sprint race, a running race, where you're just going completely flat out immediately from start to finish, because there's no time for you to make up positions through strategy, etc., because it is just go as fast as you can. And that's the nature of the beast. But with endurance racing, so many other things could influence the outcome of a race, including strategy, including mistakes, meaning not only you as a driver, but we need to do pit stops, for example, change tires, refuel, change drivers. And each of these steps potentially could be areas where time is lost. So you can imagine if you're changing a driver, you're removing a seatbelt, it's very easy to lose 1 second, 2 seconds by just fumbling, right? Or someone who's changing the tire, they might drop a wheel nut, or they might not hold the gun properly to secure the wheel nut. Another 2-3 seconds. But on the racetrack, when we're talking about losing time, we're talking about losing 1/10, 2/10 of a second is already hard to chase back. So a mistake like that or mistakes like that could prove very costly and could alter the outcome of the race. So an endurance race, you're looking for consistency, being clean, not making mistakes, and not taking too much risk. So again, we talk about the risk management. So if I'm driving and I know there's a really young, hot-headed driver who's needs to prove a point, then I might actually let him go, or maybe just take a little bit of extra care, especially if it's the first few laps of the race. Now, if it's the last 2 laps of the race, of course, everyone is going to go completely flat out to try to fight for a position. But if it's not that, then you really need to manage the risk better.
Is this something that you talk with your team in advance? You look at who else is competing and you look at their track record?
Yeah,
you study them?
It's something, we do that as well. And we try to look at who's going to drive which stints, or we also have radio communication as we're driving. So the engineer or whoever's on the pit wall might radio to me and say, so whom is behind you? We may or may not be fighting for position because he might be in a different class. But sometimes, let's say when it's in the dark, you can't see who's behind you, or you can't decipher who it is. It's just headlights flashing or whatever. So you do rely on that communication to tell you who that is and if it's a battle that you should fight or not.
So as you were describing this, I'm thinking about scenes from the movie F1.
Yeah.
Right. And so I want to ask you, you've seen the movie,
I have.
and there's many movies, Hollywood movies on racing. And that's just one of them and the most recent one. But I'm curious as to, for somebody who experiences this in real life, what do you think about about Hollywood movies and their portrayal of this life?
Yeah. Well, I think the F1 movie has been quite successful, to be fair. I think a lot of people, I've heard great feedback from female audiences, actually more than male audiences potentially. So I think...
I mean, I kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah. So a lot of people enjoyed it. Actually, I thought it was quite okay. My kids enjoyed it, and most people actually I spoke to enjoyed it. So in that regard, then I would say it's a success. But of course, you're right. It's not easy for Hollywood to portray a racing movie. And this one, they've done it quite well because they've had the resources, they've had the right people to consult to make sure that, of course, some of the scenarios that played out in the film, I would say, wouldn't necessarily happen in real life.
Like what?
But so, like, for example, intentionally crashing and then creating those scenarios where a safety car would come out or delaying others. Conceptually,
like sabotaging.
Exactly. So I think in real life, those scenarios you would be penalized quite heavily straight away, and people will see right through it. And of course, inherently, it will be quite hard to crash a car and make sure that you can still drive back to the pit lane. So all those things is a little bit dramatized, but I think it's acceptable because conceptually what they suggested is accurate. It's not inaccurate. It's just that in real life, I don't think you'd be really able to get away with something. Exactly. Get away with something like that. But and other than that, I thought it was quite okay. And the important thing is for me, I'd like to see the sport grow. And the point is the owners or the current owners of Formula One, the brand, they're trying really hard from, the Netflix Drive to Survive series and then now the film to broaden the appeal of Formula One and motorsport. So for me, someone who's passionate about motorsport, I think it's a good thing.
In the movie, there's this, Brad Pitt's character has this pre-race ritual where he places a randomly selected playing card. He doesn't look at it and he puts it in his pocket. And it's kind of a personal talisman, right, against danger. Do you have any specific rituals like that?
Nothing as interesting or as fancy to describe as he did. But normally what I do is I do listen to some music. I put on the AirPods and just try not to be distracted by everything that is going on around, because there's a lot of things going on. There's sponsors, there's team partners, people who want to talk to you. In Europe, a lot of passionate people. They want autographs, they want pictures and all that sort of thing. So I try to just hide away a little bit before the start of a race and listen to some music and it's just to try to stay more calm rather than amp myself up. I just try to stay more calm.
Do you know anybody, other teammates or anybody else who has similar rituals? Or does everybody have their own processes before they get up? It's kind of like, it reminds me of going on stage.
Yeah.
Artists, sometimes they have their own rituals of,
Yeah.
I need to be in the bathroom for like an hour.
Yeah.
Everybody leave me alone, that kind of thing. Would
Yeah.
you see that similar with your colleagues, your people, other teammates?
I think people do, but the most common one is really just to try to stay focused and whatever methodology that might be, it's more down to that as opposed to some kind of, like lucky charm or finding something
Rabbit
like that.
foot.
Yeah. No,
Something like that.
Less of that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what kind of music do you listen to? Just popped in, question popped.
Really random things. It's
Whatever.
not any particular tune. Yeah, whatever's on the playlist. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's nothing specific that you
No,
go
no,
to.
no, not really.
Would you say it's more like to drown out the noise of
Yes,
outside,
exactly,
essentially? Because
exactly.
you mentioned just now that lots of things are going on, and this is right before you have to go into the car and start racing. Is that what it is? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're back. I was going to say backstage. It's not backstage.
No, so we
in
normally
the pits?
you could be either in we have like a hospitality unit, which is sort of like a big trailer, or it could be in the pit garages as you wait. And of course, before you get on the car, there's a whole process where you're on the grid and you're waiting for the procedure, the countdown procedure. And then, of course, there inevitably you have some conversations and things like that. But I try to maybe hide away a little bit. It could be very sunny, it could be very hot. You want to make sure that you don't overheat before you get in the car if it's a hot day. And generally just try to stay a bit more calm and focused. Yeah, because that's when the nerves really build up, for me at least, it's usually at that moment when you're about to start the race, or if I'm starting the race, it's usually then. So it is even more important to try to stay calm.
It reminds me of that moment right before you get up on stage.
Exactly. Very similar to that, I would say.
Just that moment, you can hear the crowd outside, you can hear the audiences, and you have to settle yourself and rely on your training.
Yeah.
You're giving us a glimpse behind the scenes of what life is like behind the scenes as a professional race car driver. And I'm wondering, what's another thing about racing that you think people would be surprised to know?
Well, I think the one thing that a lot of people don't really appreciate is just how physical it is when you are driving a race car. Because a lot of people probably think, oh, you're just sitting in a car driving. It's sort of like driving down the highway. It's sort of like driving a normal car. But I can assure you it's not exactly like that.
Tell me, what is it like?
Well, because first of all, the one thing is, I would say, the brake pedal and the force you need to apply to the brake pedal in order to slow a car down at the rate that you need to, corner after corner, lap after lap. It's actually, if I were just to describe it, it's literally you almost have to use all the strength you have in your one leg, to slow the car down, because it's not like a road car where there's some kind of assistance on the brake pedal. So it's actually really, really stiff. So when you repeatedly do that corner after corner, lap after lap, you end up, well, first of all, because a lot of times the ergonomics are not perfect in the car, your body is twisting a little bit. If you're doing a one leg press
Right.
repeatedly again and again and again, you can imagine it gets to a point where your body starts moving and twisting a little bit, especially when you start getting a bit more tired.
Right.
Then what happens is you'll start getting lower back pain or sciatic pain and all that you can imagine, like really tight lower back and all those sort of physical discomforts. And of course, the steering, you're using not a lot of strength, but over time, depending on the type of circuit as well, it become quite taxing on your shoulders, and of course the neck from all the G forces are getting, depending on the type of circuit. So all that actually means it's very physical. Whilst from the cameras on the outside, you're just sitting there like this, but as a driver, it's incredibly physical. And sometimes, and I can quote an example literally just from this past Sunday, where I was racing in Japan in Suzuka, a very legendary circuit where it's also a Formula One circuit. We did a 6-hour race, which is not the longest race I've done, and it wasn't the hottest hottest conditions I've experienced either. But in that race, for some reason, there was some debris. I'm talking about things like grass and sand and all that, which over the duration of the race clogged up all the air vents. So it ended up making the cabin inside when we're driving like a sauna, basically. It was as hot as a sauna. And so you
And
felt
you're
like
geared up, too.
you're all geared up, you're doing that physical activity. And it got to a point where it felt almost suffocating. And it was probably one of the toughest races I've done. And I drove for 1 hour, had a break, drove another hour. And the final 2 hours, we're already approaching nightfall. So there's no more sun already. But because there's so much heat also coming from the engine, which soaks into the cabin, and with almost no ventilation, my co-driver, who's a full professional driver, one of the best drivers in the world, and a incredibly fit athlete, he drove for the final 2 hours. When he got out of the car, he was literally minutes away from fainting. So he collapsed when he got out of the car. And myself and another 7-8 people had to we were prepared for it. We got literally buckets of ice. We had to wrap him up in ice for about 20 minutes just to cool down his core. And he wasn't the only one. There were also other full professional athletes who suffered similar heat stroke scenario. So I think that's the best proof as to just how difficult this sport is and how tough it can be.
Is there a point at which the race will cancel because of this? At what point do you push through or just
Well, the
call
issue
it
is that
quits?
you don't really know, because you really rely on the feedback from the driver in the car. And there were 1 or 2 drivers who, well, actually it's quite scary. One driver had a moment where he blacked out and he actually crashed into someone lightly and woke up again and then came into the pits. Another one was, again, suffering from heat stroke so significant that he just slowed right down and just tried to finish the race, but slowed right down. So it's the organizers or the team may not necessarily know exactly what sort of state you're in. But let's say in our case, because we were leading in our class and basically Ben, who was our professional driver, a British driver, he was so determined that he must complete and take the win for us, that he said, I'd rather crash than come in and call it quits. So
Wow.
but it was scary. You know, I was scared actually when he got out, because I was, of course, you know, for me, yes, a win is great, but nothing more important than human life, right? You're not we're not here to put our lives on the line just for a victory. I mean, I would, if he had come in, I have nothing against that, because I know when I drove, I thought it was just me suffering because I didn't train hard enough. And then sure enough, these guys who are full professionals, best drivers in the world, they suffered the same or even worse. So at that point, I was just quite concerned and worried. And luckily, he was okay in the end.
Yeah, thankfully.
And even made it on the podium to get the trophy.
Oh, well, congratulations.
It was hard earned.
Very hard earned.
Yeah.
So just on that same topic, you mentioned just now that you almost had a hard time. You could feel it. And you
Yes.
thought there was a moment where you were thinking, is it just me?
Yes.
Right. So there's some thought process that probably entered your mind as during that point. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how did you push through that?
Well, the reality is, I thought to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? Because I'm not even paid a professional. I mean, I'm a non-professional who's very passionate, and of course I push as hard as I can for a good result. But it was literally on the brink of myself saying, I question. It's like, why am I putting myself through this? This is a little bit too much. I didn't really sign up for this.
Yes.
And so if I'm honest, there was a moment when I was driving where I said, what I thought, you know, should I just give up in that moment? But the funny thing about team sport and endurance racing like this is, I've had those thoughts once in a while before, but you think, okay, there's so many people behind you and there's so many people involved in this team effort. How disappointing it would be for everyone for you to be the weak link and to just call it a day, because it's not just about you. It's literally an effort of 15, 20 people, you know, supporting you. And I mean, unless it was really to a point where I really absolutely could not go on anymore, then luckily it didn't reach that point, and I was managed to push through. But literally the same, when I got out of the car, the first thing I do, I ran to the refrigerator, I put my head inside, asked for 2 fans to blow in my face. I put on an ice jacket. I had like another big pack of ice on my head. I was people pouring water all over me. And I was in that state for about 15, 20 minutes because it was just so incredibly hot and exhausting that that's what I needed to cool down.
Wow. These are things that people won't know.
Exactly. People won't know.
Right.
They see the glory. They see us spraying the champagne on the.
They're just sitting there in the
They're
car.
sitting in the car, just driving. It's like, why is it so tough? But I assure you, what I say is what I just said was 100% real, and that was how tough it was.
When you're in those moments and you have these very challenging situations where it's that one or maybe very close calls, do you ever experience some trauma so that the next time you go into the car, you have that residual memory of it being a sauna? Do you think that still lingers for people or for you?
It's funny. You tend to forget those things quite quickly for some reason. Yeah. If you know, this was just on the past Sunday. Yeah. You don't really linger and think about it too much, because I think if you do, then either you probably don't love the sport enough or you don't love what you're doing enough. But of course, let's be sensible about it. And on the next, if there is a next similar situation, try to do something better to mitigate that. I think that's the sensible approach, of course. But equally, you know, it's an interesting question. We talk about the trauma, but if we also talk about the success, you know, you don't really bask in that success for days and weeks to come thinking, wow, great, how happy I am to have won it. It's sort of like, okay, that was yesterday's news already.
Oh, okay.
It's time to move on. Okay. Great. Yes, there was a great result, but it's not like I'm celebrating for days on end about a good result. Equally, you asked about the trauma. It's not something you think about, or it sticks, at least for me, it doesn't stick in my mind for a very long time either.
Do you feel that that's a personal experience of that, or do you think that this is the nature of the game in your world? I
mean, I can't really speak for others. I think everyone's slightly different, but the nature of, you know, at the beginning we talked about being more at peace and more accepting of things. I think the fact that you enjoy less of the very highs for a long time and also suffer less from the very lows for an extended period of time is also a byproduct of being in this sort of state of mind, which let's just call it being slightly more calm, slightly more at peace of things.
More acceptance of things.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of a byproduct of that.
Something that I want to just again highlight and reiterate what you said just now was that aspect of it's not about you. And I think that that's something that universally is true when we're in situations where we feel like, why am I even doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? And why I didn't sign up for this? There's a lot of I's in those sentences, right? So one thing that I'm hearing from you is the minute you think, well, actually, this is not about me. This is team effort. And that's a principle that we can apply pretty much to anything in life. Yeah. Right. And when it's not, you don't make it about you. You make it about the bigger picture.
Bigger picture.
Exactly. Yeah. In our previous interview, you shared that racing has always been a dream for you. But for a long time, it didn't seem possible, especially coming from Hong Kong. Now you've honestly made history, right? Being the first driver to officially represent Hong Kong in international endurance racing, the first from Hong Kong to win the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup in your class. You brought home a podium finish at the 24-hour race in Dubai and Hong Kong, which we talked about last time too. And many more achievements since then. And I remember you saying that in spite of your doubt that this could happen, you eventually decided to go for it anyway, not knowing that all of this, that you would achieve all of these things. So there was that moment where you had a career already, very successful career. This was a dream of yours, and you decided to do it. So I want to zoom in on that moment of decision, because for so many people, there is a line between wanting to do something and then actually deciding to do it. And so I'm curious from your conversations from even with other professional, non-professional drivers, what have you noticed about what actually moves someone from dreaming about racing or dreaming about something that they're passionate about to actually making it a reality, specifically amongst non-professional drivers in this arena?
Well, I think everyone has their own specific trigger to take that action. For me, it was actually as simple as age, because it was when I made that really big decision to race in Europe, which was really the dream, because Europe is the highest level possible for GT type of competitions, where you have the best talents, the best teams, best circuits, all that. That was actually the moment when I turned 40, when I was 40. And everyone says life begins at 40, right? So I thought it was, it's sort of, it's like now or never, right? I felt like it was a time where physically I could do it. I didn't know how I would measure up when I would go into this foray into European racing. But one other point, just regarding your question, I would say is also think about what is there to lose. What is the worst case scenario in pursuing this dream? Some dreams might, I mean, if your dream is to fly to the moon, or if your dream is to jump up a building, I don't know, to fly, maybe there could be some very serious consequences about failure. But in my case, this dream, I think the worst case is not, maybe a bruised ego or something like that. Of course, let's not talk about having an accident, because accidents could happen in all aspects of life,
yeah.
not just racing. So I think really the important thing is figure out what the worst case scenario is. You accept that, and just be mindful that don't wait. Why wait? And a lot of times we do think, let's wait for a better chance, wait for a better opportunity. But if that opportunity does present itself to you, and in my case, you could say it could be just a bit of luck and fate and timing that I was also offered an opportunity to race in Europe at that moment in time. But like I said, to decide, I might have said, oh, maybe not, and if it was another time. But in that moment, I thought, okay, I'm at this age. I'd really like to try and pursue something which I've dreamt for a long time. So let's do it.
So you've been dreaming about this since you were a child, essentially. It's always been in your mind. But it took somebody saying, turning 40, reminding you, life starts at 40. What are you waiting for, right? But I think in a way, maybe it's that when we're looking for reasons to do it too. Would you say that you were looking for a reason to do it in some ways, maybe even subconsciously?
For sure. I mean, it's always in my mind. Another great example, a big bucket list item that I managed to tick this year was competing at this race at Le Mans in France. And that was a dream when I was a kid, from when I was, earliest memories, watching these VHS tapes, which were sent to me by my relatives, recapping the big races that were going on throughout the year. And Le Mans has like 100-year history. So it's been a very, very important endurance race for years, for many years. And for sure is a huge sporting spectacle, not just in the racing world, but having experienced it myself this year, finally, I could safely say that it is something really, really special. And so Le Mans and competing at Le Mans has always been a really a distant dream, because even when I started in 2019 racing in Europe, of course, I was like, okay, I'm getting closer to Le Mans and I would love to be able to compete there. I didn't really have a proper idea how I would do it. But because of how circumstances change in the rules and regulations in some series, it happens so that by winning the championship in 2024, and that's one thing that we didn't cover last time because it was 23 when the interview. So in 2024, I won a European championship. And when I entered that European championship, the single goal was to try to win it in order to get the invitation to Le Mans.
Okay.
So you can say I was completely focused. And last year, why I was so busy and so sucked into the whole racing is because it was like a one-shot opportunity.
That was your goal. The ultimate goal was to get to Le Mans.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you about that because I heard you say that it's a process. You can't just want to do it and get in.
Yeah.
You have to be invited. Is that the...
So you get invited by winning a championship. So it's incredibly difficult to win the championship, as you can imagine, in Europe. I mean, I have done it before, but because the competition is so high, but then you just have to really... that was the goal. And in my mind, it was a one-shot opportunity.
Why would it be a one-shot?
Because to compete in a whole championship, you're starting from March to November.
I see.
And in my mind, it was so taxing and so intense and quite draining to be that focused, and to chase a championship from March to November is just, I mean, I don't know how to describe it, because the level of competition is so high that not only do you have to perform, you also need to have the luck of the car not breaking down, someone not crashing into you, and you not making mistakes, you being able to score good points, good results in every single race you do in order to accumulate enough points at the end of the year to win. And we literally won by the skin of our teeth. I mean, it was so marginal that, one slight mistake here or there, we wouldn't have won it, and we wouldn't have gotten the ticket to Le Mans. And today I would not be sitting here telling you that I competed at Le Mans in June. And maybe I would never be able to do it, because I don't know if I have the heart or the energy to go through another championship just to try to chase this opportunity. But, thankfully it worked out.
It's phenomenal. And what was your mindset like? What was your self-talk like during that time? I mean, I can only imagine that there were some ups and downs.
Yeah,
like you're saying,
lots of them.
right? Skin of our teeth that we managed to do it.
Yeah.
From March to November, that's a big stretch of time where you have to be on the whole time. And all of these little pieces, these moving pieces have to be in place. Yeah. So tell me about your mindset during that time.
You still had to resist the temptation of thinking too much about the points situation, where you are, because that, again, it's the same thing. It's so tempting to be obsessed with thinking about points of this race. But again, with the discipline, with the correct channeling the energy in the correct way, which is just to focus race by race, to make sure you're just trying to do your job, perform at the best that you can possibly perform at, and then see what results come out of that. So it wasn't like I need to chase a win here. I really need to this like top 3, top 5. But I mean, in my mind, as always, of course, we need to make sure we score points every race, and that means risk management again. Be a little bit more risk averse. Forget about chasing wins, but make sure you score consistent points. And because myself and my teammates, we've worked together for a number of years, we've been very good at that. That's helped us win multiple championships over the years. And let's stick to that recipe, because that's what we've been good at.
In terms of consistency.
Consistency, yeah. Not just chasing after victories, because sometimes when you chase after a win, you sometimes put yourself through more risk.
How do you know? How do you know if somebody is chasing after a win versus let's be consistent? Is it the
because
way that
a lot of it sometimes it is down to your risk appetite and how much risk you want to take.
I see.
So if your pure purpose is to win, you would take more risk, like go big or go home. Let's say that's the mindset.
You can see it in some people already, right?
Yeah. You can see it. Sometimes if you have nothing to lose, you can see it. But when you're fighting for that championship, when you know that you're aiming for November being in front, and it's a different mindset to, I just want to win this race. It's different. Right. It is different. And so, yeah, by the skin of our teeth, we won the championship and got the invitation to Le Mans.
Amazing. It's almost like you have to have the dream. You have to have the goal, right? And you prepare yourself as best as you can. But at the end of the day, the way to get there is quite methodical, it feels like. Yeah. And it's quite systematic. And if you're not systematic, that's when...
Yeah, things can fall apart. Yeah.
And so you said just now that there was a lot of ups and downs, right? But how did it feel when you got it?
It was quite unbelievable, because I remember the final race was in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. It was in
November?
November, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very difficult circuit.
What made it difficult?
Sorry?
What made it difficult?
Because it's what we call like a street circuit, meaning there's concrete barriers and with very little runoff area, meaning if you make one mistake, you're going to hit the wall and or someone's going to come behind and collect you.
It's a lot more precise, would you say?
Absolute precision. Yeah. There's no, like, very little margin for error. In a normal circuit, you might have a more runoff area. So let's say you make a mistake, you might run slightly wide off circuit, but then you can come back and rejoin. Here, there's none of that.
Do they do that on purpose to put that in the very end?
I think so. Just to make it a little, spice things up a little bit more. So for sure, the pressure was really high, and but even because the point system was so tight, and there's a very specific way how they calculate the points depending on your finishing order. So even when we crossed the finish line, I wasn't 100% sure if we did enough to guarantee the win. It was only moments after when the series organizer came round and gave me a hug and he said, "You did it. You guys did it." And
so you crossed the line.
Yeah,
you had no idea.
I was still not. No, I thought I was sort of 80% certain we've done it, but then until someone officially tells you for sure, and sometimes when you cross the line, you might have a penalty, that post-race penalty. There might be some kind of infringement that can come back and bite you. So you don't want to celebrate too early until you get really the official word that for sure you've done it. And of course, when we were told we did it, I think it was more like a relief because I knew how difficult it was to get this final result. In actual fact, we didn't have such a great season. It's not like we did a lot of very strong results compared to previous years. We actually had quite a lot of difficult races, but it was because we stuck to that discipline of just scoring points every race, or as many races as we possibly could. That was what won us the championship at the end.
Was it an emotional release, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
I can only imagine.
Yeah, because it was, like I said, from a personal level, from as early as I can remember, a few years old, 5-6 years old, already had this mental picture of racing at Le Mans. But getting closer to, let's say, the past 6 years, myself and my teammates, it was our collective dream to go to Le Mans together. Although we didn't really have a specific plan how we would do it until end of 2023, when we knew that by winning this particular championship in 2024, we could get the invitation. And there was also one other really emotional aspect is my driving coach, who was someone who was really influential to my racing. He passed away last year. And, he also wanted to go to Le Mans with us together. And so it was sort of like we ticked that box for him too. Oh. So it was, it was a really special moment.
That is amazing. I wanted to ask a little bit now about Le Mans.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've just been leading up to this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So not only was winning that moment so meaningful on a personal level, meaningful for your team, given the journey that you had to get there, but winning, it meant you now moved on to Le Mans. Right? Yeah. And so tell us about that. What was that process of from winning to then going into Le Mans?
Well, the first thing I would say is it made me immensely proud because only a handful of people from Hong Kong has ever competed in Le Mans. Before myself, I think it was three people.
You literally mean a handful.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And the last Hong Kong driver who competed in Le Mans was more than 10 years ago. So what was more special was a very good friend of mine, Antares Au, who's also been doing very well in racing. He also managed to win an Asian championship to get a ticket to Le Mans. Okay. So it wasn't just myself, it was also Antares, who both of us...
different teams,
different championships. Okay. Because I won a European. There's only four possible championships you can win to get a ticket to Le Mans. So I won one of them. My good friend Antares, he won an Asian championship, which also earned him a ticket to Le Mans. So before us two, who both got invited this year, there were only 3 people who's done it in the past, in the entire history. So it made me feel immensely proud to be able to compete in Le Mans and fly the Hong Kong flag. So so it was this year. My main focus, which Le Mans was in June, from sort of May onwards, April, May onwards, I was just preparing myself to drive, to do some races before Le Mans, just to prepare for it. And so yeah,
what was that like?
That was sorry.
What was it like? So you're preparing, you get to.
Yeah. Well, Le Mans is something really incredibly special, and Le Mans is not just an endurance race; it's what I call an endurance week, because the build up for a typical race is maybe 3 or 4 days until the race, but Le Mans is like 9 to 10 days.
What are you doing during those 9 or 10 days?
So they allow you to do some testing on the circuit the weekend before, but then throughout the week there's more practice sessions. There's commitments, like there's a very famous parade that goes through town, and it's literally reams and reams and reams of people.
Because it's a cultural event too.
It's a huge. It's probably one of the biggest sporting events you can imagine. It's completely unlike any other thing.
So is the whole town shut down and closed off for this?
Yeah, basically yes.
Amazing.
Because it's also, like I said, it's part street circuit and it combines part of the streets and part of a racetrack. So they have to shut down part of the highways. But yeah, is a huge frenzy that goes on.
So it's a historical event. It's been going on for how many years?
100 years.
100 years.
Yeah, more
and
than 100
also the terrain is challenging, right? It's a very unique terrain, would you say?
It's unique because, part of it being regular public roads during the year and part of it being a circuit. It's also has a very long straights. That's why you reach such high speeds that we talked about before. But I think it's more just the whole spectacle and the ambience and just the whole
energy.
The energy is really, really, really next level. I think it's like, the halftime show at Super Bowl. That's something very unique, and you see the energy behind that. Well, Le Mans is probably a little bit like that. It reminds me of that.
And you've never been there even as a spectator?
I have been there once. I've done a sprint race there once in 2020. But and that's actually during the same weekend as this 24-hour race, but it's not the same. I mean, that is just more like for me to learn the circuit, just to try it out, to have an impression of it. But then
this is the main race. This is the main event.
Everyone is there for this main event.
Okay, so tell us about that when you start. It's a 24-hour race.
It's a 24-hour race, yeah.
And so give us a rundown. It's the day. The clock's about to start. Is that how it goes? Is there a clock?
Yeah, there's a countdown to when the 24 hours starts.
Who was the first race?
Yeah, so my teammate started the race for us. So Le Mans presents a very unique challenge, different from the type of racing I normally do, because one of the big differences, there's 3 different categories of cars that races in Le Mans. Now, in my racing, there's different classes of racing, but we're all driving the same cars, right? But different combination of drivers, which form different classes. But in Le Mans, there's 3 different types of cars, and there are 2 classes of cars which are faster than what I normally drive. So what happens
is... You drive a GT3.
Yeah, GT3, yeah. So there's another category called hypercar, and there's another called LMP2. They call it prototypes. So those both are faster categories. So when I describe going at 300 kilometers down the straights, those cars are whipping by you still, like you're standing still, So
it's crazy.
When you're driving a Le Mans, you're not only managing your own race, competing against other GT3 cars, but you're constantly looking behind you, in front of you, beside you, with these hypercars and these LMP2 cars wanting to overtake you and whipping by. And so it becomes a whole additional dimension, because you're managing this, what we call faster cars coming through. And if you're too conservative and letting them through, then you lose time yourself. Mm-hmm. But if you make one mistake, you'll both have a very serious accident. And actually, in the past, there's been a lot of very significant accidents because of a slight misjudgment, miscommunication, and all that sort of thing. And if you can imagine
that velocity, right?
At that speed, exactly. Yeah. So if you're going down the highway and suddenly, you've seen it on the news a lot of times when you have a slow car, a broken car on the highway, and suddenly someone that doesn't pay attention, and then you have a big pileup or a big crash. And that could happen, and that does happen in Le Mans. And then you imagine at night when it's, it's not pitch dark, but it's dark enough that you can't decipher what's behind you except for these flashing headlights bouncing around. and then you're trying to judge where they are relevant to where you are and where you want to let them through. And so Le Mans is best described as a very, very mentally taxing race because of that concentration that's required of you. Ironically, physically is a little bit less tough than some of the 24-hour races I do, just because of the nature of the circuit. The terrain is not as, let's say, there's less undulations, it's a little bit more flat, the overall terrain. So physically, it's a little bit more manageable, but mentally, it is just completely draining.
Is it because that there are these other cars that are there?
That's definitely one consideration. The other consideration is just, again, it's down to the condition of the track. It's very easy for you to make a small mistake and just get sucked into the wall or get sucked out. And if you're stuck, let's say in a gravel trap, your race is pretty much over. So it's very easy to make a very, very small mistake with very big consequences. So again, this is something unique to Le Mans.
Do you have any mantras or affirmations that you do when you're in these moments to stay? Is there like a word or a phrase that you repeat to yourself?
Just really just to stay focused and just be absolutely alert every single millisecond, basically.
So when you're swapping over, sorry.
Yeah, just big consequences if you make a very small judgment error.
Right. And so when you're doing these 24-hour races, which you talked about a little bit before, but I want to specifically about Le Mans. So did everything go according to plan?
No.
Okay. No.
Not much.
What happened?
Not much went to plan, to be honest. So during my teammate, when he drove the first 2 hours, someone hit him. Luckily, it wasn't.
It wasn't 2 hours?
Within the first 2 hours. So he got spun around. Luckily, it didn't have any significant damage to the car, but that certainly put us on the back foot. I think my other teammate made a slight error during one of the caution periods, and we had a penalty to serve. So that put us further back. And I think for me, I had, it's very rare actually that we have mechanical issues with a car. We've been quite lucky over the years, but here in the next day, it was something like 10 a.m. And then I had a mechanical issue, which meant I couldn't really change gears properly. And that necessitated a long repair in the garage for a few laps. So we lost quite a lot of time. So what I'm getting at is overall, the end result of Le Mans really wasn't what we hoped we could achieve in terms of like a position. But, to manage to finish the race in our first attempt, in reality is already an achievement because there were quite a people who couldn't finish for various reasons. So I would say, results-wise, we hope for more. But at the same time, I just recall before I finished my final lap that I was due to drive, I felt that emotion and that realization that, wow, when I was 5 or 6, I was just watching this on a VHS tape. And here I am at the absolute pinnacle of GT endurance racing, competing at the world's biggest stage. There's no bigger stage against the best drivers, the best teams in the world. And here I am, from Hong Kong, the fourth or fifth guy to ever do it. And so I did feel quite emotional at the moment. And that's when you realize that you should just be really grateful that you have the privilege to do it.
Is that the word that you would use to describe that feeling, that emotional feeling?
Yeah, I think you need to take a step back and just realize that just, as I described, how you're able even to get here to compete in Le Mans is already so much needs to happen. Yeah. So much needs to go your way and be in your favor just to even be there. And so to be able to do it is just an incredible privilege. And if you look at it in that perspective, I'm ready. It's a win already, right?
It's a win.
Exactly. Yeah. It's something that how many people can dream of even doing it and be able to do it. So I just felt very thankful at the end of the day.
I think there could be this story would have been told in a very different way if there hadn't been that realization. And I'm sure there are people probably at that event, perhaps, that felt that way.
Yeah.
Would you say in terms of that mindset?
I mean, I get asked this a lot. It's like, well, do you want to go back again? Do you want to chase the win? You know, you can't just let it go like this. And I get all that. And I get that side of it and that thinking. And of course, I mean, do I want to give it another shot? Yeah, I mean, I would love to, but actually, you know, I'm quite satisfied in one sense, because the goal, as I described, was to compete at Le Mans. The goal wasn't let's go win it the first time out. That was never the goal. So when I think about it, I tell myself that I've done what I've set out to achieve, and already it's such an incredible opportunity. And there's already so much to be grateful for and memories to last a lifetime. So yes, a win would be great. But if you remember what I said before, the reality is even if you win Le Mans, I think, yes, in the record books, it'll give me a great legacy. And that's very nice. But on a personal level, am I going to wake up every day and say, great, I won Le Mans, I won Le Mans, I won Le Mans? You know, I don't think I will. I won't.
Right.
So I'm more philosophical when I think about it.
Yeah. If you were to distill this experience into an insight or a lesson that this experience taught you, what would that lesson be?
I think it's chase your dreams as hard as you can, but don't lose too much sleep if you can't get the dream result you're after. And be grateful about what you have got or what you have received along the way. Yeah, I think that's really the biggest lesson. I mean, there's so many things that if you think back, how lucky and how special and how privileged it is already to be able to go through that whole process to compete there, is already an incredible thing.
So I'm switching gears a little bit here. When I work with singers, I often get to know a very personal side of them, right? And so when I see them on stage, sometimes it takes me a moment because I forget that they're actually famous. I forget there's this transformation, right? They're human. Yeah. There's this transformation, though, that they're stepping into their onstage persona. So I'm curious, you have achieved so much in these different domains in your life. Do you feel like Jonathan behind the wheel is the same Jonathan that your friends and family know? And then when you sing, you and I work on your singing, and you've done an incredible performance at the Hong Kong Coliseum, which is another huge milestone, right, that we talked about last time. Do you feel like that's another side of you as well? Or do you feel like these are just different expressions of who you are? Do you get to play different parts?
I do feel it's a different, it's different than a normal me in some ways. Sometimes I really wonder how I even do it, frankly, because I just think I'm quite an ordinary person at the end of the day. But somehow it seems a little bit extraordinary, maybe some of the things that I'm doing or I've done. But in my mind, I always think, well, someone else could do it. It's not just me who can do it. So for sure, when I step in the car, I do feel like, and one things I really enjoy about it is you just don't think about anything else. And you just think you're there for that particular purpose. And it's a very singular, focused effort. And you almost just forget who you are. And you just, maybe I have a gift for what I'm able to do in the car, given it's not like I have that much experience. I wasn't trained as a driver. I didn't start when I was 6 and all that.
They start when they're 6?
Oh yeah. A proper racing career should start when you're 5 or 6. Like the Europeans, where they start karting at a very serious and young age, every weekend, every other weekend. That's the correct path for a racer.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. It's a little bit like even skiing or, even golf, those best sportsmen, athletes, they start at a very young age. I didn't start till I was in mid-20s. So I started quite late, actually. But yeah. So I do think it's a slightly different persona. Also, talking about singing, going on stage, I would say I'm not naturally someone who feels comfortable on the stage. I kind of when I go on the stage and do the singing, I kind of try to switch into, okay, I'm not me anymore. I'm someone else and who's confident and feels that joy. So it is tapping a different side of myself, I think, when I step into these roles. Yeah.
Which is scarier, getting on stage to sing or getting behind the wheel of a car?
Well, I can tell you this. A lot of professional race car drivers I speak to said precisely that. Stepping on the stage is much scarier than driving a car. And I can see that. But yeah, definitely I would say that experience stepping onto the stage at the Coliseum was more nerve-wracking than driving a car on the limit, I would say.
Jonathan, you've checked off some incredible milestones, right? Winning GT World Challenge, your Endurance Cup Pro-Am title, right? Taking a class win at the 24 Hours of Spa, getting to Le Mans, and many, even performing as a singer at the Hong Kong Coliseum, which is one of the city's most iconic venues. Are there any other big dreams or goals outside of racing, outside of singing, that you still want to pursue?
Well, there's something that I'm working on right now, and it is an initiative called the Pinnacle Project. The Pinnacle Project is basically my effort to give back to sport in order to find the next sporting hero of Hong Kong. Now, what it is essentially is, if we look back the past few years, let's go back to, let's say, 2018, 2019, that period where we felt maybe Hong Kong was a little bit divided. You know, people weren't really in the most harmonious state. One thing that I felt really united people was the Olympics. And in particular, when we had certain Olympians from Hong Kong perform at a very high level, got great results. And for example, Chang Ka-long in fencing, when he won the gold, I could see how united people were over that result. So it proved to me very quickly that sport has the power to really unite people and give hope and give a very positive energy to Hong Kongers. That's the first thing. The second phenomenon I noticed was how the popularity of fencing suddenly skyrocketed in Hong Kong. You had a lot of parents wanting their children to get into fencing. And that was a very big catalyst to developing the sport here locally. When I look at what I've done in the racing world, in some ways, not similar, but the popularity of motorsport I see has grown in the past few years in Hong Kong. Now, motorsport is still not a popular sport in Hong Kong. It's not a mainstream thing. We don't have our own circuit. We don't even have a training ground for anyone to try. But as a result of my successes and some other drivers from Hong Kong internationally, we've seen that the local media and the interest in the sport locally has grown substantially. And if you watched the news last night or today, I mean, there's some reports on the races that I just did in Japan. And so what I saw was international success in a sport could also help develop the sport locally in Hong Kong. So the idea of Pinnacle Project is to identify athletes who are either at already an elite state, who've done well in Hong Kong competitions, who are on the cusp of being able to compete overseas, or they may already be competing to some degree overseas, but maybe lacking some resources to really help them reach the pinnacle, to help them reach the top of their game. So it's a social enterprise, it's nonprofit. But basically now we are very close to announcing numerous athletes which we will support in order to help them achieve that success. And some of these athletes are chasing Olympics, the Olympics, qualifying for the Olympics in LA. Some might be Asian Games. But what you'll see is a breadth of different sports, different age ranges, different stages of their careers, but they're all sort of like at I would describe as an elite level. And so my goal is to try to help find the next sporting hero, for them to achieve international success, for us to help them promote their success here in Hong Kong, to help Hong Kong have a more of a feel-good factor, and to promote sport in general. So this is my next mission.
Amazing. And is this something that I hear you say that you already have a group of athletes as the inaugural
So
stage?
we're very close to announcing them, because we've gone through the application process. We had around 55 applicants. We narrowed that down, and imminently we'll make an announcement on who those are.
That's exciting. How do you feel
Very
about this
excited.
project?
But I'm very excited about it, because for me, it's always trying to do something that I can relate to. And of course, the only unfortunate thing is I would love to help more people, but because resources are somewhat limited, we need to be very focused on trying to achieve the greatest impact that we can. But I'm really excited about it, and I was in attendance with all the athletes that we shortlisted. So hearing about them, and the decision making is by a committee of people. There's 5 of us on the committee, all existing or previous athletes in different
Categories?
Disciplines.
Okay.
Yeah, sports. So, and that's very intentional, because we wanted to tell these candidates that we understand what you need. We understand that each sport and each of you have your individual needs. And either it's, you may already know what you need, or you may not. And perhaps our experience or through our own networks, we can help bring those resources to you. And of course, working with their coaches or working with whatever sporting body or institute that they're under. But supplementing and trying to plug those gaps where specifically, let's say as a Hong Kong athlete, they feel that compared to in their sport, which are the athletes, which are the top 1, top 2, what do they have that you don't have? Can we try to give you what they have in order to help you reach that level? So that's the spirit of the initiative.
What would success look like for you if this were to be a success?
For this? Yeah, I mean, if we can help any of those individuals reach their goal, reach their targets, and some of them could be an improved world ranking. It could be in order to qualify the Olympics. But for me, success would be, as I described, that they have success. We can help them promote it locally, and the sport grows and more people pay attention to the sport. And that for me would be a success.
It's almost like helping them to achieve their version of Le Mans.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Whatever that goal would be. Are there any new sports that you'd like to be able to bring or nurture in Hong Kong that we don't have?
I would say it's not something that we don't have, but in our application process, for example, we accepted applicants in breakdance, for example.
Breakdance?
Yeah, breakdance. So breakdance is not a typical traditional sport. It's not particularly well known. And you can imagine to get funding, if you are a breakdancer, is going to be very difficult.
Yes.
Now, at the end of the day, whether or not we choose a breakdancer is down to all different factors. But just as an example of the breadth of our consideration set, we don't limit ourselves as to traditional constraints. So in one of the cases, the candidates that we're looking at, I don't want to give too much away at this moment, but let's just say this individual is someone who's very successful already in his sport, and his sport just happens to be something that's not very popular.
Okay.
So despite his success internationally, and this is someone who might be, let's say, top 20 in the world, nobody talks about it. And I can feel his frustration, because he's like, my achievements are very substantial.
World class.
But no one cares today. But that reminds me a lot of motorsport, where I went down my path, where it took years to get results and for people to start noticing and caring about it. So this is something I feel like we can definitely help this person, because it feels very similar to motorsport. And let's try to help them be recognized for his achievements. And if he gets recognized, then we'd probably be able to grow the sport.
It's just like you said, the catalyst of the fencing.
Yeah.
For fencing in Hong Kong. All of a sudden, every parent wanted their child to be in fencing.
Exactly.
It was just a strange phenomenon that happened within the span of a few days, it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan, that is really exciting. And I'm so excited for you to have this as your next big challenge. And not only is this something that is personally meaningful for you, but it's meaningful to Hong Kong. And
I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. I have, to close up today, I think I could talk to you for hours, but I do have a couple of closing questions that I want to ask you. What does living authentically mean to you?
I think it means literally that. Just being comfortable in your own skin. And being authentic. I think I don't know how better to put that.
Comfortable in your own skin, listening to your passion, maybe, would you say?
Listening to your passion, yeah. And just being at peace with yourself and what you do. I think that's probably the most important component about being authentic, because I think only when you are being authentic can you be at peace with yourself. Yeah. And, we spent the last hour talking about success. And I do think that success is a byproduct of being at peace, being content, and being authentic. So it's very hard to chase something or hope for success when it isn't really you or is not real.
If you could be the inner voice of wisdom for your younger self, the Jonathan just starting out on this path of following your passion, what's one thing you would want him to know?
That's not an easy one. Just, follow your heart and believe. Yeah, and don't give up.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your insights,
my pleasure.
And your journey with such honesty. And thank you for sharing your future dream as well. It's always inspiring to hear how you approach not just racing, but life with such passion and resilience and that spirit of constant growth. And now that spirit of acceptance and peace as well as peace and authenticity. So I wish you all the very best in your upcoming races and in your upcoming project for Pinnacle.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you again for being here.
My pleasure.